The war in Ukraine, now entering its fourth year, is far more than a regional dispute. It's a conflict that has redrawn global alliances, shattered countless families, and forced the world to confront new realities. What began as simmering tensions on the border quickly escalated into a full-scale war, with devastating consequences for millions. The fighting has emptied once bustling city squares, brought world leaders to emergency meetings, and shaken the very foundations of the global order. As of June 18, 2025, the conflict rages on, touching every aspect of life, from the price of bread on your table to the stability of nuclear power plants. Ukraine's wheat fields, once a symbol of abundance, are now battlefields, and the threat of nuclear disaster looms over the region. Understanding this war is crucial as its consequences reach far beyond the trenches of eastern Ukraine. The world watches, protests erupt, and news cycles are dominated by the latest developments. What started as a slow-burning crisis has erupted into a full-scale inferno, forcing every nation to take a side and reshaping international politics in the process. We'll cut through the noise to examine the key battles, the immense human tragedy, and the stories of resilience and survival that emerge from the chaos. The war's international dimension is undeniable, with NATO troops on alert, Russian convoys advancing, and diplomats racing to find solutions that seem ever more elusive. Behind every headline are millions of lives changed forever, families torn apart, cities reduced to rubble, and entire communities forced to flee their homes in search of safety. Children grow up in bomb shelters, hospitals struggle to treat the wounded, and classrooms sit empty, leaving a generation scarred by trauma and uncertainty. The outcome of this war will shape our world for decades to come, influencing everything from security to economics. That's why it's essential to understand how we got here, what's at stake, and why the world cannot look away. The roots of this conflict stretch back to 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea after a pro-Western revolution in Ukraine. This act, condemned globally, was followed by years of simmering war in the Donbas region. On February 24, 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion, calling it a special military operation to mask its true intent. The Kremlin expected a swift victory but was met with fierce Ukrainian resistance from both soldiers and civilians. Russia's narrative quickly unraveled as the war dragged on, exposing the reality of a brutal invasion. The term special military operation remains official in Russia, symbolizing the regime's tight control over information. For Ukraine and the world, it has always been a war for survival against a far larger neighbor. The war's course has been shaped by dramatic turning points. In early 2022, Russia's assault on Kyiv failed, as Ukrainian forces used Western weapons to repel the invaders. The Kharkiv counteroffensive in fall 2022 saw Ukraine reclaim vast territory, showcasing its tactical skill and Western support. Ukraine has since taken the fight into Russia's own territory, launching cross-border raids and deep strikes with drones and missiles. A June 2025 strike reportedly destroyed much of Moscow's strategic bomber fleet, a major blow to Russian air power. Today, the Frontlines stretch over 1,000 kilometers, with both sides locked in a war of attrition. Russia relies on manpower and relentless assaults. Ukraine counters with precision, technology, and ingenuity. The fight has moved from Kyiv's gates to the fields of Kursk, reflecting a constantly evolving and expanding conflict. The war's most devastating truth is its human cost. Russian military casualties have surpassed 1 million, with Ukraine also suffering heavy, undisclosed losses. Civilians endure daily missile strikes and shelling. Just yesterday, a Russian attack on Kyiv killed at least 15, including a US citizen. Body exchanges between the two sides are a grim routine, offering painful closure to thousands of families. Ukraine accuses Russia of using these exchanges for disinformation, adding psychological warfare to the tragedy. Air raid sirens and destroyed homes are daily realities for millions of Ukrainians. Systematic Russian attacks aim to terrorize civilians and break national resolve. The true toll is measured not just in deaths but in millions displaced, families separated, and a region haunted by trauma. This is a generation lost to war. The war in Ukraine is a clash of military philosophies. Russia, facing massive equipment losses, now relies on mass infantry assaults, sometimes using motorcycles and buggies to move troops. These costly tactics echo the brutal attrition of past wars, trading lives for small territorial gains. Ukraine, in contrast, leverages Western technology and homegrown innovation. Drones, often built by volunteers, have become a decisive equalizer, destroying Russian armor and artillery. Precision weapons like HIMARS strike deep behind enemy lines, disrupting Russian logistics. Advanced electronic warfare helps Ukraine counter drone attacks and maintain battlefield flexibility. Ukraine's doctrine emphasizes agility and precision, outsmarting a larger foe with 21st-century tools. It's a modern David versus Goliath struggle where technology and ingenuity challenge brute force. This is a global conflict with clear lines of support and opposition that stretch across continents. The alliances and rivalries at play are shaping not only the course of the war, but also the future of international relations. Russia, increasingly isolated from the West, now leans heavily on North Korea for critical military support. This includes artillery shells, ballistic missiles, and even the promise of troops, ties that were formalized in a sweeping 2024 defense pact. The partnership signals a deepening of military cooperation as both nations seek to counterbalance Western influence and sanctions. Meanwhile, Ukraine's ability to resist invasion depends on a steady flow of massive aid from the United States and NATO allies. This support includes not just advanced weapon systems and ammunition, but also real-time intelligence, training, and humanitarian assistance. Without this lifeline, Ukraine's position would be far more precarious. The recent G7 summit reaffirmed Western commitment to Ukraine, with leaders pledging to accelerate both military and financial support. Behind closed doors, they debated new strategies to keep aid flowing and maintain unity, even as domestic pressures mount. Western sanctions are designed to cripple Russia's economy, targeting everything from banking to technology. Yet, high global oil prices and Russia's economic resilience have blunted much of their intended impact, allowing Moscow to continue funding its war effort. Russia's missile strike on Kyiv during the G7 summit was a calculated message to the West, a show of force meant to demonstrate that international gatherings and pledges of support will not deter its military ambitions. The Trump administration has expressed growing frustration with Putin's refusal to engage in meaningful negotiations. So far, direct talks have produced little beyond limited prisoner exchanges, leaving broader peace efforts stalled. Other global crises, such as the escalating Israel-Iran conflict, further complicate the international response. These overlapping emergencies strain diplomatic resources and allow Russia to exploit divisions among Western allies. In the end, the war's shifting alliances and evolving sanctions are shaping not just the battlefield, but the entire geopolitical landscape, redrawing lines of power and influence for years to come. The Russia-Ukraine war is also fought on a digital battlefield. Both sides weaponize information, Russia with state media and disinformation campaigns, Ukraine with agile social media and direct communication. Russia's propaganda aims to confuse, divide, and justify the war at home and abroad. Ukraine's transparent messaging, led by President Zelensky's nightly addresses, rallies support and showcases battlefield successes. The digital frontline is chaotic, where truth is often a casualty and disinformation spreads rapidly. Recent body exchanges have even been used to sow confusion and distress. In this war, controlling the narrative is as vital as controlling territory. By mid-June 2025, the war has settled into a brutal, grinding contest of attrition. Both sides are locked in a stalemate, unable to deliver a decisive blow, as the front lines shift only by meters at a time. The landscape is scarred by months of relentless fighting, with shattered towns and exhausted soldiers bearing the marks of a conflict that shows no sign of ending soon. Russian offensives intensify around Sumy and the Donbas, relying on manpower-heavy assaults and relentless artillery barrages. These attacks yield only incremental territorial gains, but come at a staggering human cost. Russian commanders push forward, determined to break Ukrainian lines, but progress remains painfully slow. Ukraine responds with a series of localized counterattacks, demonstrating remarkable resilience and tactical skill. Small units exploit gaps in Russian lines, reclaiming lost ground and raising the Ukrainian flag over recaptured positions. Morale remains high among Ukrainian troops, despite the constant threat of bombardment. In a dramatic escalation, North Korean troops now fight alongside Russian forces on the front lines. This unprecedented foreign involvement highlights Moscow's deepening manpower crisis and signals a new phase of internationalization in the conflict. The presence of foreign soldiers adds a new layer of complexity and risk to the war. Meanwhile, the G7 summit concludes with a renewed pledge of strong support for Ukraine. Yet, debates over new sanctions reveal divisions among world leaders, as they weigh the economic risks of further isolating Russia. The international community remains united in principle, but the path forward is fraught with uncertainty. Russia signals its long-term intentions with provocative nuclear posturing, upgrading key military infrastructure in Kaliningrad, Novaya Zemlya, and Belarus. These moves are designed to send a clear message to NATO and the West, raising fears of a broader confrontation. The aerial war escalates dramatically. Massive Russian drone and missile barrages rain down on Ukrainian cities, testing the limits of air defenses. Night after night, the skies are lit by missile trails and explosions as Ukrainian systems intercept most threats but cannot stop them all. On June 17th, Kyiv endures one of the largest attacks of the war. 175 drones and 14 cruise missiles launched in a single night. The assault aims to cripple critical infrastructure and terrorize civilians, forcing thousands to seek shelter as emergency services race to respond. Ukraine's defenses, bolstered by advanced Western systems, continue to hold the line, though at a high cost. The struggle for control of the skies and the ground grinds on with no end in sight. The Russia-Ukraine war is more than a distant conflict. It's a test of the international order and the principle that borders cannot be changed by force. Its impact is global, disrupting food and energy supplies, fueling Europe's largest refugee crisis since World War II, and diverting resources from other global priorities. The risk of escalation remains dangerously high, especially with nuclear threats and foreign troops in the mix. Both sides are preparing for a long, grinding fight with peace nowhere in sight. This war is about sovereignty, self-determination, and the right to choose one's future. The bravery of Ukrainians has inspired the world, but they cannot bear this burden alone. Understanding and supporting efforts for a just peace is a responsibility for all who believe in a world governed by laws, not force.